What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Nuts and Bolts Sports. The usual here, talking about the NBA's return, bubbles, finals. We're here. We did it. I know I said that last time, but now we're officially here. We can talk about the finals, and we're going to be previewing basically the entire series here. Los Angeles Lakers versus Miami Heat. Game one tips off tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. It's kind of an interesting situation here. We've got a Lakers fan on this broadcast. We got a Celtics fan who's a bit upset with the Miami Heat right now here as well. There's a lot to discuss here. We've got a hardcore LeBron fan on this thing. When you look at this series, I think it's first off interesting because I know we've all been reading the stories and whatnot about the fact that both these teams were 10th in their respective conference last season. First time that two teams that did not make the playoffs the previous year are playing each other in the finals. There's a whole lot of storylines to discuss. LeBron playing against his old team, Jimmy Butler, after his turmoil that he's experienced with those previous teams, showing up in the finals and showing up big time. There's so many storylines to discuss here, and I kind of want to just get right into it. Henry, I'll start with you. What are you kind of looking at this series? Like, are there any key matchups? Any particular sort of, is it the coaching matchup? Is it the big player matchup? There's so many things to sort of dissect here. What are you sort of looking at as being maybe your main focus in this final series?
Like what I've been saying in previous episodes, I think the biggest matchups are going to be the role players, just hands down. We all know what Bam's going to do. We all know what Jimmy's going to do. We all know what LeBron and AD are going to do. But it's just really a matter of, is their supporting cast going to step up? Because that's been the story of these playoffs. I mean, we see KCP playing better basketball this postseason. We see Kuzma, he can be a little streaky at times, but when he becomes an essential part of the team offensively, he can do that. We see Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero stepped up tremendously throughout these playoffs in a way that a first year's player and a second year player shouldn't really be able to do. For a team that's just barely became a title contender. That's the main focus for me. And I know a lot of people are going to focus on, is LeBron going to play like LeBron? Is AD going to prove his worth, on a championship caliber team? Is Jimmy Butler going to prove all of his haters wrong? Because here's the thing, the Miami Heat are still counted out so harshly, even getting to this point. They're just like, it's going to be, for 5-6 games, they're plus like 400, plus 300 in terms of, people betting and everything. So, it's just going to be a factor of, is their supporting cast going to show up? Like, is that it's as simple as that? I believe that, because we all know what the star players are capable of. But I'm curious to hear Jordan's take, because Jordan's the Laker fan, and we all know what, like I said, we all know what LeBron and AD and all of them can do. But who do you want to have the series? As in, like, not just a breakthrough series, but one that'll propel this team to make sure that they can solidify themselves as championships this year.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on the head there with the role players, because I think the stars are going to be up to their usual standard. You look at the Lakers role players; they've been up and down mostly throughout the postseason. They've been hot. Everyone's kind of had their turn being hot, right? Like Rondo's come in and he shot 42% from three and kind of killed Houston that first series. You've also had, Kuzma go up and down. He's been sometimes good, sometimes bad. Same with, Danny Green's been lost. So they have a lot of question marks definitely going into these finals here. But they're going to all have to bring it. This is not, there's nothing after this, right? So they're all going to have to be there. They're all going to have to hit shots. I think they're going to get a lot of open looks, especially with the Heat going, zone, which I think Miami will use a lot. But they're going to have to be able to hit open shots from that. And, that's how you're going to beat Miami in that regard. On the Heat side, I mean, I've been singing their praises all bubble. They've been great and so fun to watch. They have, no, for all of Jimmy Butler's ego and like his fun that he has and whatever, his loud personality, he doesn't have an ego in the sense of like, hey, give me the ball and get out of the way, right? He's just a different star in that kind of sense. So they've all kind of fed off him and his energy. They all kind of have. I heard somebody say it today, and I thought it was really good. He said they all kind of have like a chip on their shoulder in a sense. Jimmy's got the chip obviously from being tossed around from team to team. Tyler Hero was, they're all like either draft, they're not high draft picks, right? They're all, Tyler Hero was drafted, just at the end of the lottery. Duncan Robinson's this kid who went from D3 to Michigan to the league. Bam was kind of doubted at first too. So they have all these guys that, feel like they have been kind of counted out at some point in their careers and deserve to be in a better spot. And so that's dangerous, right? That's a dangerous mentality to have. They play, they're not going to, I don't think they're going to fear the Lakers. I don't think that, you saw kind of last series, like, Michael Porter Jr. out there and some of these other young guys, like these guys grew up playing, LeBron and all the video games, and they grew up idolizing LeBron. And, they kind of, I don't want to say they gave LeBron too much respect, but they didn't seem to really try to like get into his head and try to do anything with him. And I think you're going to see Miami do that, right? Jimmy's battled LeBron how many times and had honestly decent success guarding him. I looked at the numbers. He's kept him under 50% shooting from the field in the last 3 series they met in. Guys like Dragic are feisty, right? They're going to be trash talking, getting in their face. So it's going to be an interesting series from that respect as well, too. Like, I think LeBron's going to be challenged. Not just physically, but mentally, as more than he has in any series this postseason, and that'll be big for him too. Can he solve the Heat's defense? Can he solve that zone? Can he deal with Jimmy? So it's going to be interesting.
Jordan, I'm really glad you brought up the zone aspect of it, because that's kind of what I've had my eye on this entire whatever week that we've been, or 5 days or whatever we've been preparing for this series, to sort of get on board. And kind of what I've really honed in on is, the role players. So you guys both sort of touched on the pieces that I wanted to talk about. And what it comes down to for LA is whether or not the role players actually do show up in this kind of situation. Because LeBron is not as talented as he is. He's not really a player that's built to play against a zone, because he's not going to try to penetrate the same way on a zone that he would if he was going one-on-one against a man. The gaps are certainly there for him, but it's not going to be as easy for him to create out of those kind of situations, especially when the head of that zone is somebody like Jimmy Butler and Jay Crowder. He's not going to have the ease of penetrating and getting to a spot in the high post and kicking it out. It's gonna depend on these guys of Danny Green, Kyle Kuzma, even Rondo for an extent. KCP is still gonna have to be consistent. Are they gonna be able to knock down those shots? The shots will be there against this Miami zone. If it doesn't go in, then these Lakers are gonna get battered by this Heat team. I expect that these players like Danny Green, who have been here, will show up finally. That's what I'm hoping we'll see. But I do have a bit of concerns just because we haven't seen that consistency out of them. Somebody like Kuzma, who I think we've seen break under a lot of pressure, will get hurt here. I think AD is going to be playing a little bit farther out than he has been playing. He's obviously been shooting the 3-ball. I think he's going to get a lot more in this series than he would against Miami, especially with Bam protecting the rim. That's kind of the matchup I have my eye on more than even Jimmy and LeBron, is Bam and AD. Who gets the best of the sort of big man matchup? Because I think that those two players go at each other very well on both ends of the floor, offensively and defensively. I think that's going to be a real entertaining sort of matchup to watch. They have similar play styles in a way as well. There's so much to sort of dig into in this series. And I am kind of curious, do either of you guys think that a player like LeBron, I think Rondo's going to actually have a really good series, because I think that he's going to attack the zone very well. I don't see LeBron having as much ease as Rondo, because I don't think that he's sort of, he's obviously, he's ridiculously quick, ridiculously fast, ridiculously strong, but I don't think he has that sort of, maybe the size being a problem sort of attacking the zone, but I think Rondo might have an easier time sort of penetrating in there. I see Rondo maybe getting heavier minutes. I don't know, Jordan, I'll toss it to you first. What are you kind of seeing out of that sort of point guard situation in LA?
Yeah, and you talk about different ways to beat the zone and kind of go at it, and getting you've seen another series, right? That Boston kind of struggled with it. They had guys like Tice getting the ball at the foul line, and he's not really able to pick apart his zone with a jump shot or passing. I think LA is hopefully going to make some adjustments and try to get AD the ball there. They're going to try and get LeBron there, where maybe he has a little bit more extended range to do some things. And Rondo too. I think Rondo is a very key piece of that for all his kind of faults over the last couple of years. He's generally always shown up in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. He's got the experience, right? He's got a couple finals, three finals appearances, and he's obviously a fantastic passer, as we've seen throughout this postseason. So getting him the ball in spots, letting him make good decisions is going to be huge. I do think he gets more minutes. I think it's interesting too, how much zone is Miami going to play, right? Because they played a decent amount, I think, against Boston.
They played a lot against Boston.
And Boston was out of all the teams that played at least 10 games in the playoffs, Boston ended up being the worst 3-point shooting team in the bubble, and that really hurt them. The Lakers were the second worst, so that right there. Mm-hmm. And ironically, Miami is third. So it's really going to come down to who can make their shots. And if Miami does play that zone for a long time, if it works, if I'm Miami, I wouldn't change anything. If it's working against the Lakers, I wouldn't go man, because I think once you go man, that's where LeBron can start to thrive, right? He can start to hunt for, hey, whoever is guarding Duncan Robinson, come up, and whoever has Duncan Robinson on, comes to a pick, or Tyler Hero or Dragic, any of those guys and that's what the zone does, right? It hides some weaker one-on-one defenders for Miami. So if he's able to get in a situation where he can hunt, That's going to give LA a little bit, better time. But I don't expect Spoelstra. I mean, Spoelstra knows LeBron, right? He coached him for 4 years, and that basically his true prime. And so I don't think he's going to give LeBron anything easy. He doesn't want to put LeBron in a situation where he can succeed and where he can get points at the rim. So I think you're going to see a lot of Miami Heat zone. It's interesting too. I think the mental aspect is so interesting because, like, you think about like if this is a normal finals, everything was normal like last year. You'd be having these guys, go into you had to go to Denver and play in that arena and play with the thin air and play with the crowd. Same thing, with Miami, like their crowd gets pretty raucous too. It would have been so interesting to see like how Kuzma, Caldwell Pope, all these first timers in the finals handle that yelling, that charisma from the fans. And instead, they're in the same court that they've been playing on. So I'm wondering, and the same goes for the Heat too. I mean, I would be curious to see. I'm sure Staples Center would be, ridiculously loud, and how that would affect maybe the Miami players. It's interesting to see like what these guys are going to do because it is the same court, it's the same shooting. Like there's no real crowd. You have that pumped in noise, but they know it's pumped in. So I'm wondering if we're going to see slightly better finals performances from guys than maybe we would have if they would have had to go play in front of crowds. I think it changes a little bit mentally there, but it is still the finals. Guys still do get a little tight, knowing that this is the biggest stage. And yeah, like you said, Kuzma, Caldwell Pope, all the guys, Danny Green. I mean, I hope that he's going to show up, but he has not shown any evidence that he will at this point. He's shooting atrociously from three. He looks, 60 years old out there running around trying to guard guys. So he's gonna have to show up for them to win. Yeah. And we know Cruz is going to show up. That's a given. He's the man. But it's going to be interesting. It's obviously this whole year, this whole season is such a unique set of circumstances. But at the same time, I do want to point out, I don't think that we should take away from either of these teams like making it there. I think Scottie Pippen was saying something the other day like how, well, it's not like real basketball. They're not having to travel, whatever. I'm like, yeah, but like they're still going to play the games. They still have to play each other. Like the Bucks were in retrospect, the Bucks are probably always going to, have Giannis still being a little bit short and not quite at what needs to be. Boston was being in the bubble or out of the bubble wasn't going to change the fact that they had Kemba and Tice as their bookends on the lineup, which is going to hurt them. So I think everything fell into the place that it would have fallen in had we had the playoffs. And I think we do have, the best representations of each conference here. Yeah. So it's tough, but so the zone is going to be the biggest thing. I think Miami plays a ton of it. It's worked. They're good at it. And I think the stat was on the LeBron zone plays this year. He's like 6 of 16 from the field, 10 turnovers, and not a lot of points created. So that is going to be an issue for him, and he needs to solve it. You can't get around this. You have to go through it.
Can we just, these like stupid old players coming out and saying shit about modern day basketball? Can we just stop that? Because the basketball in the bubble has been so good. And I don't want to hear any of these old players like Scottie Pippen and Reggie Miller and all these guys. I don't want to hear them talking about it because
and Paul Pierce.
Yeah, I'm just so sick and tired of it. Because first off, the play style is so different when you're playing anyway. So I'm just sick and tired of you guys comparing the players and the teams and whatnot. But also, this basketball is as good basketball as we've been getting recently because these guys are not traveling, because they're well rested. Right. Everybody's at that same level. It doesn't matter. It all balances out. I'm just enough of that, because these guys, if anything, they're playing better basketball than they would have played back in the 90s because they're not traveling and because they're not taking that time to go from one place to another, and they don't have to worry about being tired. They should be bringing their A game, and I think we're seeing that.
They really have.
We've been seeing that from a lot of players and a lot of teams. The basketball in the bubble has been incredible. We've seen top tier players meet the standards and show up, and we've also seen incredible games, incredible matchups, incredible series in these playoffs. So I'm just sick and tired of that. I also want to loop back around to the point that you made about Jimmy Butler and LeBron and that sort of matchup. If you look at, I'm not sure if you mentioned if it was regular season versus postseason, but if you kind of look at the numbers between the two in the regular season, it's actually a little bit more balanced. And I think they actually, in their sort of career-long matchups, they haven't even sort of split down the middle, 17 and 17, I believe is what I read earlier. But if you look at the disparity between the regular season and the playoffs, it's huge. LeBron has a major advantage in the playoffs. And even if his numbers do drop a little bit, because Jimmy, I think, has done a better job than most have against LeBron in the postseason. LeBron still shows up in big moments, and he's hit multiple buzzer beaters over the Bulls when Jimmy was there. There's so many sort of big time situations that you can look at when LeBron played against Jimmy in the postseason and showed up in a much bigger way than Jimmy did. And I think that is sort of in Jimmy's head, and I think that's actually what's going to drive him to play much better in these series, because he is this is peak Jimmy. We've never seen Jimmy be as good here, and we've been talking about his stats and whatnot and how they haven't really been there. He doesn't need to be putting up big time points and big time numbers to be the best Jimmy that he's been, because his impact is just sort of felt on the floor. And it goes back to the discussion that we had about LeBron early in these playoffs in that Portland series, where he was, he's putting up solid numbers. Like he's putting up 20, 10, and 7 or something like that in a lot of those games. And those weren't they weren't the usual LeBron numbers that we see. Right. But you could feel his impact on the game, and that's what Jimmy's done, just sort of in a less overt way, I guess, than LeBron. So I do see that certainly being a key matchup, I guess, and sort of highlighting the AD and Bam matchup. What I want to see is whether or not AD does take over here in this series, because I think, this is it. This is his moment to shine, and I hope he shows up. I really do hope he shows up, because I am rooting for the Lakers in this series, because I want LeBron to win this. And if LeBron's going to win this, AD does have to show up. I think Bam is going to be consistent, but Bam's good days are not as good as AD's good days. I'll stray away from the AD slander a little bit to actually give him a little bit of praise here. AD, when he does show up and he has his good days, he is much better than Bam on his best days, both on the offensive and the defensive end. So that's kind of why I'm honing in on that matchup in particular. Henry, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about what Jordan brought up earlier, how like they're playing in a neutral state. So does finals experience even matter at this point?
Because not a lot. I mean, like it matters in the sense that somebody like a LeBron who has been here 10 times is not going to tense up. Somebody like Jimmy who's shown up for the first time, he might be a little tense, but that crowd noise is not going to affect you.
Exactly.
The same way, for sure.
So that's the thing. Like the only player in the Miami Heat with finals experience is Udonis Haslem, who's not playing at all. He's just, there. And Andre Iguodala, who is playing, who has a lot of finals experience. This is his 6th in a row, Yeah, 6 in a row. So he's almost up there with LeBron, in terms of, how many consecutive times. But do you guys see his hair also like receding and everything? Yeah, that's how you know we're going into the new generation.
He's really trying to combat LeBron there.
Yeah, for real. But that's the thing. And then when you look at the Lakers side, who has finals experience, obviously LeBron, Rondo has played against a Lakers team with Kobe, Pau Gasol, Andrew Bynum, and all of them. He's played against a team that was twice.
So is Dwight. Dwight's played against that team as well.
Yeah, exactly. So Dwight Howard, Danny Green, other players that do have finals experience with the Lakers. So, but does that matter at this point? Like I love that point that Jordan brought up, because come to think about it, would Jamal Murray have those type of series that he had in the bubble if everything was normal? I want to say yes, but it is a huge factor. It is
maybe not factor. Like fully. Like he might have like 85% as good of a series or 90, but I think the crowd element does have a big play to it, especially with the finals. Think about like the finals, like all the pregame stuff they do. The intro's longer. And it seems like the lights are brighter, especially if you were traveling to LA, especially in these like
Staples,
if you're in the conference finals and the finals, you travel to LA. I mean, you're seeing all the people, courtside, all the celebrities. It's a different mental approach.
And fans can be ruthless. Like we see, you guys see the fan altercations that Russell Westbrook has had with the Jazz and all that.
Russell Westbrook's gonna get, when his kid has pickup games in his youth league, he's gonna get in fights with fans.
But that's the thing, like especially for these young players, it can get a little bit too much for them. I think if we remember, like an example, Kobe, when he airballed like three shots against the Utah Jazz back in four airballs. The crowd was on his ass. You don't think that got to him mentally? Obviously, for a young Kobe, yes. But think about it now. You got a rookie, Tyler Hero. You got a second-year player in Duncan Robinson who's finally getting minutes, showing out. But they're not facing these crowds. They're not facing that atmosphere. They're in such a neutral place. It's so funny because when the broadcast cut the sound effects of like crowd cheering, it's dead quiet in there. It is like it's almost dead silence in there. So I'm like, you know what? Like they're able to focus a little bit more. If they miss a free throw, they don't have 20,000 people yelling at their ears or just really shaming them on that. So I think that plays a huge factor. I think finals experience is out the window, not fully, but is going to play a factor that they're in a bubble in Orlando. Oh, by the way, what do you guys think about the NBA Finals logo?
Which, like on the baselines?
No, the one like right in the middle of the court.
They haven't put it in the middle of the court, right? Are you talking about just like the way it says NBA Finals there, as opposed to having a trophy?
You know how we used to have like
I missed the trophy. The trophy's got to be there.
Yeah,
I kind of like it without the trophy. It just looks clean. I don't like a lot of mess on my court. I don't like a lot of those busy courts, like when Milwaukee changes up their floor and stuff like that, and Brooklyn's floor right now. I don't love those busy courts. I've kind of liked the bubble where it's just the clean, no logos and stuff like that. Just the Black Lives Matter across half court. I kind of like it, honestly.
I like the trophy. In the finals, the trophy is because it shows you when you get those overhead shots of the guys like walking the court. It's like, oh, this is what they're playing for. But yeah, it's definitely, like you said, I think it's definitely not as pertinent here. I wish they would pump up the crowd even more. Like now that we're getting to the finals, I wish it'd be a little bit louder because, like you said, when there is a lull in the crowd noise that they're pumping up, or there's like a timeout or something, you do hear it's pretty quiet in there. I mean, it's just like 20 family and friends. It's Deuce Tatum looking at an iPad. Like that's all we have, as fans. So yeah, it'll be really interesting. For the guys for the Tyler Heroes, Duncan Robinson. The only thing I could think with them, because they seem to be built a little different, especially Hero. He seems to just feed off of everything, and I think he would embrace playing. He'd be like, yeah, I'm going to Staples and playing game. I think he would embrace it more than other guys. Yeah. But for them, if especially Duncan, I think Duncan Robinson's such a shifty player on offense, right? He doesn't look athletic, but he's actually pretty good at running around screens and getting open looks. And obviously we know he's a sniper. But for him, I wonder if he misses his first, say he misses his first 2 or 3, or he gets something blocked early, does that just hurt his confidence in general? Because crap, it's the finals, I got to show up for my team. I wonder if that plays into it for him. Not so much Hero. I think Hero thinks he's going to make almost any shot that he takes. But Robinson could be affected a little bit. And with Bam, I think Bam's great. I mean, he had a phenomenal game 6, after saying that he would need to play a better game for Miami to close. I wonder, though, he's only, he had to deal with Giannis and some of those bigger guys in the Milwaukee series, but in the Boston series, I felt like he got to, not relax, but he was guarding Daniel Tice.
He got to relax.
Sometimes when Grant Williams would come in, Robert Williams, he only dealt with Tatum and those guys if it was a big switch or something. Yeah. So you're going from that to having to handle Anthony Davis, as much as Dwight Howard's been a pain in my butt. He's, the energy that Dwight's going to bring trying to bang the boards. I don't know if they necessarily got that from Boston in the last series. So
you said energy.
Bam is definitely that. I don't know if it's effective, but it was energy. But Bam's definitely going to have more of a workload this series, and I'm interested to see if he's up for it. I think so. I think he's a phenomenal talent. I've enjoyed watching him play. He's obviously come up big with the block on Tatum, and he's completely dominated Game 6 from start to finish on both ends. So I'm interested to see what he can do with that AD matchup, because, like you said, if Jimmy and because Miami's going to throw out Jimmy, Iggy, Crowder, Derrick Jones Jr. They have guys to throw at LeBron to keep, they have fresh bodies. They'll just keep rotating on LeBron to at least make him work. Right? He's not going to stop him, but you're going to make him work for it. With AD, it's one of those things. He's kind of had, and it's what I wrote about. He's had PJ Tucker, he's had Nurkic and Whiteside, he's had Jokic, who for all his talents on offense isn't the best defender. Even Paul Millsap is an older veteran who probably was still mismatched. So AD hasn't had a test like that either, where he's had somebody that's going to be, almost as tall as him, very active, good athletic body, knows what he's doing. Mm-hmm. So I think it's going to be a tough test for both of them. I think that's probably the biggest key of this series. It's always, the number 1 stars generally show up in the finals unless something crazy happens. Yeah. But it's those number 2 stars. When you think back to those last time Lakers were here, I mean, obviously Kobe was doing his thing, but Pau Gasol was huge, especially in that 2010 against Boston. Mm-hmm. He was critical in those last couple of games. Same thing for Boston when they won. Pierce was doing his thing, but Garnett and Allen were huge on their end, and so that's going to be the key. Can those second guys show up? This is AD and Bam's first finals, right? And then this is totally new to them. I expect it to be a very interesting matchup. A lot of can Bam stay out of foul trouble? That's the thing. AD's been getting guys in a lot of foul trouble, right? Yeah. Jokic on the bench all last series. Mm-hmm. If he can stay in the game and stay committed, I don't know. I mean, I think their backup would be Olynyk, or would they just go small?
Yeah, it would be Olynyk. Is there technically their backup center?
But
but
if you're Miami, do you play him?
Even if you play him, he's not matched up on AD. I imagine you put somebody like even Iguodala on AD off the bench just because I don't know if they have
work. Make him settle for jumpers or something.
I mean, we saw Denver put Grant on AD a lot, so it's not a completely different matchup to put Iguodala on him, honestly.
Right. Yeah. So that'll be a huge key.
I'm also curious, against the zone and against Bam, how many touches does AD even get compared to the touches that he's had in the previous series? Because the thing about AD that differs from a lot of centers is he's creating a lot of his own shots off the dribble, back to the basket, whatever it may be. Does he even get that many touches away from the basket? And is he able to create? Is he able to penetrate against the zone? Because I think that certainly causes issues for him. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him shooting a lot of sort of mid-range jumpers from like the elbows or whatnot. Yep. And I don't think Miami has an issue with that because AD will knock them down, but that's not going to shift the way that LA is playing in terms of in a positive direction. If anything, it'll only hurt them if they're feeding just off AD sort of mid-range shots. That's not going to help them in any way, and that's going to make them struggle a lot. And that's where these role players come in key. And yeah, it does Danny Green show up and hit big shots? Does Kuzma show up and hit big shots? KCP's been consistent, but I don't know if they might even force him to be taking like 7-8 3-pointers a game, and is he going to knock them down in a high rate? I don't know. Maybe 2 to 3 go in, but is that enough? No, I don't think so. I think I'm still comfortable with LA calling LA the better team because they obviously have the better record. But I think that the way Miami has elevated this play is going to test LA more than they've been tested in this entire playoffs and maybe even in this entire regular season. I don't know, Henry, what do you got to add to that?
No, I agree. Yeah. I agree. I mean, think about it like this. The Miami Heat are the 5th seed in the East. The East is predominantly weaker than the West. We all know that. So to be 5th in the East is like being 8th in the West. They are statistically the worst team, but think about it like this too. Like we were seeing Jimmy Butler, Jay Crowder, all these guys gel so well together in the most crucial times. Mm-hmm. So who do they remind you of? They remind me of the 2004 Pistons. No clear-cut superstar, just a bunch of dudes that are, and I'm gonna quote Jordan again, bunch of dogs. Like that are really just gelling together so well, and it's incredible to see. That's credit. Give credit where credit is due. That's something we emphasize here on this podcast because I think we do realize what type of capabilities they've given each other because they do have each other's backs. We see the relationship they have with Eric Spoelstra. We saw the relationship that the Nuggets have with Mike Malone. It's huge. Like it just goes to show. Do the Lakers have that type of relationship with Vogel? Like, do they trust him as much as he trusts them? No, like that's just the reality of it. It's always going to be LeBron's team. Mm-hmm. Like we all know that. Like, the game is going to run through him and mm-hmm. his decision making and his decision calling. For the Miami Heat, it's like everybody is on the same page. Mm-hmm. Everybody is in such a consensus of like where their goal is. And aside from that, they all came from the gutter. Like they all none of them were meant to be great. None of them. Like Jimmy Butler, he was homeless. He was homeless, played in junior college, then Marquette. Is still a 2-star recruit. Look where he's at now. Duncan Robinson. I don't know if you guys saw on social media, but after they won the Eastern Conference Finals against the Celtics, he someone from the Ringer, staff writer from the Ringer, he posted that screenshot that Duncan Robinson. Yeah. He thought his dreams of being in the NBA were over. Look, 3 years later, look where he's at now. Bam Adebayo and all them. They were all counted out their whole journeys, and now they just didn't give a crap about any of that. They just completely cut off the noise, especially because there is no noise in the bubble. It's just you and your team. Mm-hmm. That's the thing, like that they focused on, and they just gelled so well on that. They capitalized on it, and I am gonna give credit where credit is due. And I think this is gonna be the biggest challenge for the Lakers because they're gonna face a team that have been through the worst. And I'm not just talking about the NBA playoffs and the bubble. I'm talking about everything else that have prepared them for this moment, for the most difficult task in their life so far. They've been through so much shit in their life that now is the moment that all that experience is going to accumulate to, making them so much harder to beat mentally. Yeah. Like I said, LeBron and AD, they have a lot of experience, but they were meant to be great. Yeah. Like they knew that. So, what are you guys' thoughts on that?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the coaching thing to loop back to where you started this point and the trust that they have in Spo. And this goes back to what we talked about last time is the fact that Spo knows LeBron. He knows how LeBron plays. And I think that more than any other coach, he can draw up a scheme that for this Miami team that is a very, very strong defensive team to slow down LeBron better than any other team can. And I think that is definitely key, because I don't know if Vogel can make the sort of switches to adjust to the way that Spoelstra is going to be coaching. And I think that coaching matchup is very huge here, because we saw Spoelstra completely outmatch Brad Stevens, who Brad Stevens is, and still, in my opinion, top 3 coach in the league. But somehow Spoelstra went in there and just completely outmatched him in the coaching lineups and schemes and whatnot that he did, and that he threw against Boston. And I think that is certainly key here, because I think it is going to be important to slow down LeBron, and that does adjust the way that the Lakers are going to play. Does LeBron is smart enough, I think, to make those adjustments. The question is, are the players on the court smart enough to make those adjustments? I think players like Rondo are, but then you have guys like Dwight and JaVale who are not the smartest players and who are going to make a lot of mistakes and are going to get stifled by the way that Erik Spoelstra plays defense, and his guys play defense. And I think that's going to cause major issues for LA. I don't know. What do you think, Jordan?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, like I said, we've been talking about all year how good Spoelstra's been, especially in this bubble. He just seems to have everybody playing as one cohesive unit, which, when you think about it, is really hard to do. To have from top to bottom, he's been switching lineups. Some days Kendrick Nunn's played a lot of minutes and then not played. Some nights, Olynyk come in and give them 15 minutes and then sat for 3 games. Like,
we haven't even talked about Dragic here.
Yeah. Dragic, same thing too. Dragic was kind of the bench guy all year, and now he's moved into the starting lineup. So it seems like he has the ultimate freedom to just move and make any lineup adjustments without worrying about like anybody griping over it, right? Anybody being upset over playing time or shots or anything. They don't seem to care at all, which is rare. It really is rare, especially in the NBA where it's like kind of like a me league. It's good for them. And kudos to Spoelstra and Pat Riley for creating that culture. Kind of like the Spurs. It's a Spurs-like culture.
Yeah.
I do wonder. Cause I was just kind of thinking about it. We talk about it's all the time is the heat zone, right? They're going to play a lot of it. How they're going to handle it. I'm not saying I condone this, but obviously we saw the Lakers go into a little bit of a zone against Denver. That's what sparked that comeback in Game 3, and almost brought them back to win that game. Miami, as I mentioned, the Lakers of all teams with 10 or more games in the bubble, the Lakers are the second worst 3-point shooting team. Boston's last, and then Miami is right just ahead of them by like a percentage point. So but that's because Hero and Robinson, I think, are the only things keeping their percentages high. Jimmy's not a good shooter. Bam's not going to give you a lot of looks, etc. I'm not saying LA should do it. I'm not saying it would work. I wonder if they're going to kind of flip it and maybe give Miami a couple minutes of zone here and there. Not long stretches, but just a little something when they have an athletic lineup out there that maybe could bother them, because I feel like they're not going to be as adept. Like LeBron is obviously, A+ level passing, right? Rondo, really, you could put him as like A level passing as well. But like I don't know if like Dragic is a good passer but not great. Same thing about they don't have like an A+ guy to be like, hey, you go here, here, and here, and I'm gonna just find you. I don't know if Miami could do that. So I'm not saying it would work. I'm not like condoning it. I wasn't a big fan of the zone for the Lakers last series, but I'd be interested to see if they turn it around on them at some point.
I wouldn't be surprised to see it, just because we saw the Lakers do it after they had that success against Denver in that fourth quarter. We saw them do it in each game after that, I believe.
Right.
And they weren't bad at it by any means. It wasn't nearly as successful as it was in that fourth quarter, but it was good. I think it was good. That being said, I don't think it's good to do it against Miami, at least not in big stretches. I could see them throwing it at Miami for a couple possessions just to throw them off their game. But Jay Crowder, up until the Boston series, was shooting the ball pretty well from 3. Even actually in the beginning of the Boston series, I think he was shooting the ball pretty well. We've seen Iguodala hit big-time threes in the playoffs. Jimmy Butler can catch fire and hit big shots. I mean, you think about back to Philly when he hit like 2 game-winning threes, and they're not the best 3-point shooters. But if these guys are given open looks, they are dangerous. And then yet Hero and Robinson are obviously going to be threats. You could even stick. This is something where you can stick Olynyk in there, and he can sort of tear apart the zone from the corners or whatever it may be and hit those threes. I don't think it's a good. And even Bam, he's not a good 3-point shooter, but he can stretch the floor better than a lot of other centers can. I don't think it's good for the Lakers to stick to that the way that Miami, I think, can stick to it against the Lakers. I
agreed. Maybe like 90 seconds, like last 90 seconds of a quarter. Like, hey, Miami's been playing. They're on like a 10-2 run. Let's go into a zone and see if we can just confuse them. Again, I'm not saying it would work. They'd have to have the right lineup, right? You have to have LeBron, AD, Rondo would have to be like your 3 guys because they're IQ defensively, and then you probably have to have like I'm not even joking. Like, I think you'd have to have like Caldwell Pope and like Caruso or something like that. Like,
Caruso has to be a part of that. Yeah.
Oh, say that louder. That was
no,
great.
It's true. It's true. He's been one of their better, more consistent defenders here as well.
Just knows where to be positionally.
Yeah, he's smart. But the fourth player, KCP, I'm a bit worried about that. I might even trust Danny Green a little bit more. I know he's been hobbling out there. He doesn't look as quick, but he is a much smarter defender than KCP. The Lakers definitely have options with it, but I don't seeing it being. It's just not consistent. They're not as consistent on the defensive end as Miami has been in this bubble and in these playoffs. So that's where I see problems there.
Yeah, and I would penetrate. Like, I was kind of thinking about it with the Lakers trying to go against the Heat zone. They're obviously not the 3-point shooting team to beat it. It's not like, they can just hit a bunch of threes and Miami will be like, hey, let's just not do this anymore. I think that they're not good enough for that. So I'd be interested. I'd really love for them to get, like LeBron, like have him off ball, have Rondo or Caruso, whoever's, bringing it up, whatever, and then get LeBron the ball, like that kind of the middle of that zone and let him make ideally you want LeBron to just be making the best decision for your team every offensive play.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can get him the ball there, if you can get Rondo the ball there, have them cut and drive into the lane. All of a sudden, they're pulling the center in, and then maybe have it doesn't matter. It could be AD, it could be Dwight, JaVale, whoever's on the playing that center position. Have them kind of cutting, in from the side block there. I guess you want to call it. Maybe getting some layups, getting some alley-oop, something. Just quick hitters. Like I feel like I don't want LA to get sucked into hey, we just have to shoot well enough to beat this zone because that's not going to happen.
No.
So I would really prefer them to get to the rim more, take advantage of the fact that there may not be as much help defense because everyone's in their respective zones, and just kind of force Miami out of it that way by just pounding the rim. I mean, they have the athletes to do it, but it's fine. It's all about execution.
Mm-hmm. I kind of want to build off of that a little bit. Maybe we can use this to sort of close things off and give our predictions after the fact. But, with LeBron being out there and him being such a core to this offense and having to create everything through him, like you're saying, what does Frank Vogel do with his lineups? Because he's already working on a tight lineup. Does he tighten it up even more? Do we see LeBron and AD pushing 40-plus minutes every single game here? I imagine yes. Especially because I imagine that Miami stars are also going to be playing heavy minutes. But I think that also might cause issues because I think LeBron is still playing at a high level. But is he, with the age, you don't play that high. He's reduced his minutes recently in LA than compared to the minutes that he's playing in Cleveland. And I think that has sort of added to success here, especially in this season in particular, having some time off last year, playing less minutes this season. I think that certainly added to his success. If he's going long stretches, does that concern you at all, Jordan, as a Lakers fan? And Henry, I want to get your thoughts on it as well. What does Frank Vogel do here with the lineups? Does he tighten it up, and does extended minutes for LeBron cause any issues for the Lakers?
Yeah, LeBron is, obviously used to, think about all the years in Cleveland and those prime years in Miami, where he was playing, especially in the playoffs, 42, 43 minutes a game. Because physically he could do it, right? He's been, just a physical freak his entire career. His minutes have been limited. They're in regular season. They're on a very strict regimen.
He was very strict with his coming out when he was coming out of the game. Yeah, he was on top of it.
Yep, it was at the 6-minute mark, whatever that first whistle was there. He'd come out, he'd sit. AD played the whole first, and then he'd come back in for the second for about 4, 5, 6 minutes, and then take a little bit of a breather, come back in to finish. And that was what they did for the third quarter as well. You saw in the playoffs here, especially as we got into the second and third rounds, you saw him leave at the 6-minute mark, but then come back with 70, 80 seconds left.
Yeah.
And just to give them a little extra boost offensively. And I imagine they'll keep doing that. Ideally, it's tough because on one hand, it's the finals, right? You have nothing else after this. It's the comments, you can rest in the offseason. You're almost there. So, but at the same time, you don't want LeBron, if they're going to be, if he's going to have to be trying to figure out the zone, if they're going to be playing any, when they played zone against Denver, it was good. But they also were LeBron, those guys were gassed after playing because you got to be constantly, you have to move almost as much in a sense, more so than man, because while you're not chasing somebody around the court, it's just a lot of quick before, which will tire anybody out, even LeBron. So if they're going to be doing that, you don't want to push them over 37, 38, maybe 39 to 40 if it's a really close game.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have to be careful with it. And but at this point, LeBron knows his body. He knows himself, and I'm sure him and Vogel have already talked, and AD as well, as to what they're going to do. LeBron's going to, if LeBron wants to come in, he's going to come in the game. If he wants to come out, he's going to come out. You can't say yes or no to that.
The coaching matchup is really Spoelstra versus LeBron, isn't it? It's not.
Exactly. So, but you want to see, he ramped it up in the last round. He played a couple more minutes against Denver than I think he had in the Houston and Portland series. Mm-hmm. And so we'll see if he's got, I imagine he's got enough left in the tank. I think not having the travel, not having to go city to city, especially with them winning Saturday was huge because, it gave them a couple extra days. They haven't played since Saturday night. They had full days off Sunday, and I'm sure it's been recovery and some practices since. So they are somewhat fresh, which is good. But we'll see. Miami's just as physically a gifted team, I think, in terms of athletes, and they're going to give the Lakers everything they can handle. And it's all execution at this point. Everybody knows the plays. Everybody knows what everybody's going to do. You just have to do it better than your opponent. And we're almost there.
Yeah, Henry, let's get your thoughts on that, and let's also get like your closing thoughts and predictions on the series as well.
No, I just think LeBron's he's a super freak. He's a super athlete. That's the thing. Like he can play still at 35 years of age in his 17th season. He can still play 40 plus minutes. I think like you guys were saying, he knows his body best. But this guy, I saw a statistic the other day. At 35 years of age, Shaq was averaging like 13 points for the Suns. And then Michael Jordan, he was retiring and everything. All these great players at that same age were already at the low points of their career. LeBron is still at it like such an all-time high that I'm not going to be surprised if he does play the 40 or 42 minutes even, especially against a Miami Heat team that are probably going to do the same thing. I mean, I don't think we're going to see a lot of minutes from certain bench players, but when it comes to players like Jimmy Butler, LeBron, and all them, Bam Adebayo, they're gonna play probably the 39 to 42 minute mark because at the end of the day, remember Tyronn Lue used LeBron all 48 minutes against the Warriors. Well, he needed to because that was their only chance of survival. But right here, they're playing against a very, very, very difficult team, and when AD is out there on the floor alone without LeBron, he can find some struggles to see who else can score the ball, when other role players are not as efficient as they can be. So do I think LeBron needs to play 40 plus minutes? Yeah. Can he do it? Yeah. Do I believe and why? He's an athlete we have never seen before. Mm-hmm. And the only guy to do it is definitely him. And that's probably my final thoughts on that.
All right, and do you have a prediction for the series? You want to give us your numbers here?
I hate to say it's Lakers in 7.
Okay. What about you, Jordan? Closing thoughts and predictions here.
Yeah. I think, like I said, it's really tough because I've really enjoyed watching Miami play all playoffs long. You've seen me. I've come in with the Jimmy memes, the gifs, the commercial with Jimmy. I've been all Jimmy. But in the back of my mind, I also knew that they were on a collision course. So we'll be abstaining from any Jimmy-related items throughout the finals here, unfortunately. I enjoy Miami completely. They're such a fun team. If the Lakers were not in the finals or any good, I'd be 100% pulling from them no matter who was coming from the West. It's a shame I have to root against them. But at the end of the day, obviously, I'm still sticking with my guys. I've picked Lakers in 6 every series, and knock on wood, it's worked out so far. So I'm going to continue with that. I think it's going to be, we said, I said Lakers in 6 against Denver, and I said it was going to be a tough 6. But in the back of my head, I was like, well, there's a lot of mismatch issues that the Lakers take advantage of. So I wasn't like stunned that they won it in 5. Mm-hmm. But with this Miami team, I don't think we're going to be cheated. I don't think this will be 4 or 5 games. I think 6 is the absolute minimum. Yeah. I could definitely see a world where it's 7. I think the Lakers at the end of the day, the finals comes down to having, they have the 2 best players, right? If you're ranking all these players in the series, they have the 2 best guys. LeBron's been there. He's gotten it done. Even when he's lost in the finals, except for 2011, he's gotten it done. For the most part, he's always been efficient. He's the same guy. So I trust him to do his thing. I trust Anthony Davis to have, take advantage of another mismatch. I know he's hungry. I mean, he was giving all the praise to LeBron, and he talked about how he wants to go to 9 straight finals as well. So he seems to have that mindset. Mm-hmm. I think the role players will do just enough. I'm not saying that they're going to be excellent, but I think, if they can just get like one or 2 guys a game, it doesn't have to be the same 2, but if it could, if it can be Caruso and Rondo, and it could be, Kuzma and Danny Green the next game, it's just 2 guys to step up and help take a little bit of the scoring load off of them and make some open shots. I think that's what's going to make the difference. So, I'm excited. I'm going to be. I still have 2 hours to just sit here, so I'm going to be a wreck. But Lakers in 6.
Okay, it's funny, Jordan. I don't think we've agreed this entire time that we've been doing this thing, but I also have Lakers in 6 here. Reason being, and this is going to be, I guess, my final warning for this thing. Tonight, more than any other game 1 for LeBron, this is a feel-out game. He wants to see what Spoelstra does against him in this series. He wants to see how Spoelstra adjusts.
1-8 career finals game 1.
Yeah, it's don't call this series over after game 1. Don't call it over after game 2. This is going to go long. This is going to go to 6 or 7. I have Lakers in 6. To touch back to what Jordan said, I think when you have the 2 best players in this series, despite what I've said about AD on this podcast, I think he is better than Jimmy and Bam. as an individual player. And I think when you have the two best players in the series and you still have the best player on the planet, I think that's what gets you over the hump. You include the finals experience there with that LeBron has. And Rondo is going to be a key piece off the bench. I want everybody to understand that, because Rondo was a key piece against Denver. He's going to be just as key here against this Miami team, especially trying to pick apart that defense. Denver threw some solid defensive schemes against LA, and Rondo was there every single time picking them apart. He was very, very good. He's going to be key here. And yeah, those role guys, I think that you are going to see. I think you're going to see a big game from Danny Green. Danny Green likes the finals. He shows up in the finals, whether or not he showed up in San Antonio. He wasn't terrible in Toronto last year. He's going to show up in the finals. I hope